accurate information.
Like Tony and Troy. Okay, we'd like to get started. Becky, could you lead us in prayer?
Father God, we just give you thanks one more time that we can meet here in a public building and hold a meeting where we can speak out as our rights guarantee us. And we just look to you to bring us through these situations in our country. And for you, all the glory and praise and honor. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Okay, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the reason we're here tonight is Barry talked to Bill out of the Memorial Services at Smithfield, and we have a lot of different groups across the state that we're all associated with, most of us. We negotiate and talk about among ourselves, and those are listed the groups in all the different counties. Probably the three main things: Obamacare, illegal immigration reform, fair tax, and smart meters, which is a topic we can talk about. The problem everybody said with Bill is the Patriot Act, the fiscal cliff, and re-election of John Boehner. So we're going to leave the things that were problems away behind us, and we're going to move on into Obamacare, and that'll be the first. And what's going to happen, we've got individuals up here that are going to let Bill talk about the topic, and then they'll have some questions to ask that have been sent by all the different groups and individuals across the state. So with that, Tony, if you start out with the first topic.
First topic is, what is your opinion of Obamacare? I'm drastically, 100% opposed to the health care law. I have voted some 40 plus times to repeal all or part of the health care law. It is disastrous for America. It's an impediment to economic growth. It's driving health care providers out of the industry. There is very, very little that's good in the health care law. We have been successful about 6 times in getting the administration to pull back portions of the health care law. You might recall the 1099 issue requiring small businesses, and some of you are small business owners that would have been required to file those 1099s for any contractor that you pay over $600 to. Very, very onerous. It would have been billions of dollars of increased taxes in essence on small businesses. The Class Act, they couldn't implement it even though they asked for it. That was repealed also. Of course, you've seen the president on his own initiative, and I have many, many questions and concerns about his authority to do so, because it was, as the Supreme Court ruled, the law of the land. He delayed the employer mandate. Well, I think if big business deserves a break from this health care law, certainly individual families and individuals deserve a break from the health care law. So all I can tell you is that I continue to work hard to try and repeal the law, to put healthcare decisions back in the hands of patients and their doctors, to give the American people the ability to invest in health savings accounts so that they can pay for their routine health care at a much lower cost than buying some massive government-mandated health insurance policy. I think in tort reform is important because we want to keep our doctors in the treatment rooms, the operating rooms, and the delivery rooms rather than in the courtrooms. And then I think portability from state to state and job to job. Why not make these insurance carriers compete for your business rather than having a captive audience within a state? If they had to compete for your business, for their insurance premiums, for their livelihood, you would see a different mindset among health carriers. There are a couple of things in the law that I think are worthy of consideration in any kind of replacement. One, I don't think people that have pre-existing conditions got that way by their own choice. A person who is diagnosed with cancer, or a person who is born with a congenital heart disease or something like that, they certainly did not ask for that condition. So I think that not allowing insurance companies to deny coverage because of pre-existing conditions, I think that's a good thing that we should consider keeping. I also think that when you look at an economy like ours, where 45+% of our young people that graduate from college are unemployed or underemployed, it's a good thing, at least for now, that they're able to stay on their parents' insurance until they're age 26. So repeal the law, let's put some common sense back into it, let's get rid of the unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. that are trying to set themselves up to make our health care decisions. Let's put health care back in the hands of patients and their doctors. And for many of you in this room, I can tell by the color of your hair, you're probably concerned about the cuts to Medicare. The $760 billion in cuts to Medicare are very real. About $200 billion of that came out of Medicare Advantage, and there's about 57,000 hardworking Ohioans that invested in Medicare that's going to have their benefits reduced as a result of that. So, kind of a comprehensive statement. I hit on a lot of different stuff where that's concerned. So, that's where I'm at.
I'm going to take over verbatim here, okay? Both you and Rob Portman co-signed the Ted Cruz bill to defund Obamacare. For the Cruz-Graves effort to have teeth, Republicans in both chambers must show their commitment. Why have you not signed the Mark Meadow letter to show that commitment?
What Mark Meadow letter are you talking about?
This is from somebody else. I have no idea. Anybody know what that's about?
I guess it's a letter they have in Congress that's just saying that you're going to support.
I'm going to tell you, if
Yeah.
there's a way to defund Obamacare, I'm going to do it. Is that good enough for you?
That should do it.
Okay.
Up until now, Congress has done nothing except pass 40 bills that we all knew would go nowhere. When they had the opportunity to do something during the fiscal cliff, they and UK. Why?
Let's talk about the fiscal cliff. Remember what you're dealing with the health care law. The health care law is funded inside the health care law. Do you remember some 75 times? How many of you have read the health care law?
Parts of it.
How many of you have read the health care law?
Can't read it all.
Well, let me tell you what it says about 75 times in the health care law. What funding may be required? What funding may be required? And don't quote me on that. It's probably not exactly those words, but essentially, the health care law is self-funding. You and I talked about it, ma'am, when you mentioned it a few minutes ago. It's been one of the greatest injustices that's been perpetrated on the American people in generations. Every expert from Washington, D.C. to California has acknowledged that it's going to cost twice as much as the president and his allies said that it was going to. It's going to cause skyrocketing healthcare costs. It's going to cause access problems. But inside the law, one of the worst things that it did was that it built the funding into the law. It's mandatory spending. It's not discretionary spending. Do you understand the difference between mandatory spending and discretionary spending? There is mandatory spending is spending that results from law that has been passed by the House, that's been signed by the Senate, that has been acted by the President. That's mandatory spending. You have discretionary spending that comes up for review every year. That's why we go through the budget process, we go through the appropriations process. That's where we deal with discretionary spending. Okay? Discretionary spending is what keeps the federal government operating, for example. That's where the EPA is funded. That's where the Department of Education and the Department of Transportation and the Department of Commerce and those kinds of agencies, that's how they get their funding. That's called discretionary spending. That's that area where we can make adjustments. And oh, by the way, we have reduced discretionary spending because that's what we've been able to, that's what we have control over. We've reduced discretionary spending 2 years in a row, and you're going to see it go down again this year because of the bill that the Republican-led House put up. So, dealing with Obamacare is going to require the cooperation of the Senate, and it's going to require the cooperation of, guess who? The President. Because, guess what? You guys want me to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is our system. And we have to face the political realities of that situation. If there is a way to defund Obamacare, I would do it in a heartbeat. And if it becomes available, I will do it in a heartbeat. If there's a way to repeal Obamacare, I will do it in a heartbeat, and I have voted every time that the opportunity has come up to do so. But when you're talking about shutting down the federal government to try and make a political point, let me ask you a question. When America runs out of money, first of all, let me ask you a question, and then we'll go from there. How many of you...
Already run out.
How many of you... No, we haven't. No, we haven't. How many of you want me to give this president more authority? Let me see a show of hands.
You already have.
How many of you want me to give this president more authority over the American people? I didn't think so. Do you know, under our system of government, do you know who has the sole authority to determine who gets paid?
Congress.
No. Do you know who has the sole authority to determine who's going to get paid when we run out of cash to pay the bills? It is not Congress. You and I have had this discussion before.
You're not totally accurate either.
I am accurate. I am accurate. Look, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you.
Okay.
No, we're not here to
I'm
argue.
sit here and argue.
We're not here to argue. I want to hear what, just
I'm
listen.
not going to sit here and argue with you. I am there on your behalf. I'm not asking you to believe me. You go do your own research. Show me then, sir, where you draw your reference from.
I draw my reference from Rubio, Mr. Limbaugh, the conservative wing.
Rush Limbaugh is not an official. Tell me where you draw your reference from. Where in the Constitution does it say that Congress has the authority to determine who gets paid when we run out of money?
We're going to run out of money. Because
No.
Yeah.
You just told me that I'm not accurate. So tell me what your reference is. You're leading the people in this room to believe that I'm not telling you the truth.
In some issues...
We're talking about this issue.
Okay, all right.
Tell me what your reference is.
You have the Congress has the authority to spend.
The Congress has the authority to spend. We create the budget.
Right.
We create appropriations bills.
Right.
When those go into law, and we run out of money to pay the bills that the government duly authorizes, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they should have authorized them, okay? I'm not saying the government should have incurred those debts. They did. They did. They passed laws. The Congress passed it, the Senate passed it, and the President signed it. It's called the Affordable Care Act. When that happens, and we run out of money to pay the bills, do you know who has the sole authority to determine who gets paid? It is the President of the United States and the Secretary of the Treasury. It is not the Congress. I don't make the rules.
Mr. Johnson,
I live by them.
I have a question. Why is defunding Obamacare shutting down the government and running out of money?
Exactly.
Here's the problem. Defunding Obamacare. Here's the way the process works, sir. Don't worry about shutting down the government for a second. Let's just say that we all decided that we were going to defund Obamacare. Here's how that has to be done. The House, which starts all funding legislation, has to pass a bill. It then has to go to the Senate, who also has to pass the bill. When the Senate passes the bill, it then has to go to the President, who has to sign it into law. Is there any doubt in your mind as to whether or not Harry Reid and President Obama is
I
going to
understand
agree?
they're not going to defund Obamacare by what Congress does.
Right.
But that doesn't shut the government down either.
Right.
If the Democrats want to shut the government down, they're going to shut it down because
Right.
Congress has already said had their say.
No, the shutting down of the government happens if in September the current budget authority, the spending authority expires on September 30th, 1st of October.
Bill, if you would pass a bill that just eliminated Obamacare in that bill and sent it on to the Senate, just give it to them. Just say, here it is.
Okay.
Here's the bill. Now they're stuck with it. The American people's going to say, well, the Senate's got to do something, and
I
the
wish I
President
could
has
tell
to
you
do
that is true. Let's look back at the last time that happened. Let's look back at the last time that happened. Do you remember 1996? Who was in office? Bill Clinton was. The House passed a spending bill.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
The Senate passed a spending bill. They sent it to President Clinton, and Clinton vetoed the spending bill. And the federal government shut down.
So he shut the government down.
But who did he tell the American people did it?
Why are the
This is
Republicans
different. This is
running
Obamacare.
scared?
This is worse.
It's not a matter of running scared.
It is. You don't have no trust in the people.
They can't explain their position.
Yeah.
I'm not scared. I want to know if you're prepared to accept the consequences.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Do you understand what those consequences are?
I understand it's not as bad as
Do you
Obamacare.
understand what those consequences are?
Yes.
Okay. In the back of this room, I've got a group of retired Navy SEALs. Do you understand that when we shut the government down, that their veterans' benefits do not get paid? Are you prepared to turn around and look those four guys in the
Nobody
face and tell them that that's worth it?
Nobody wants to shut the government down.
No. I
The
don't know.
Republicans are afraid they're going to
Yeah,
win.
well, you look me in the eye, or my relative when they have cancer and they can't have health care because of Obamacare.
Listen, but sir, listen.
I come from a socialist country. I'm immigrated here.
Let's be fair and adult-like in this conversation.
Right.
You can't sit here and say that I'm the one doing that. I have been fighting on your behalf for the last 3 years to repeal this health care law. You've asked me to support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Right.
That is the rule book that defines how I have to operate. And you want me to work outside that system and manipulate that system.
Obamacare in itself isn't manipulating the system. He's not following the rules.
Let me give you a corollary. What if we were able to repeal Obamacare this fall? What if in 2014, President Obama is successful in his stated goal of putting Nancy Pelosi back in as the Speaker of the House?
He won't be if it's repealed.
Listen, what if he is successful? You don't know how that's going to turn out. You didn't think he was going to get reelected in 2012 either, I bet, did you?
And it would
But
be
he
close.
did. But he did. And I didn't want that. You guys didn't want that. What if he is successful in putting Nancy Pelosi back in as Speaker of the House? What are you going to do then if the Democrats are trying to overturn the repeal of Obamacare? Are you going to want them to work outside the Constitution?
They already are.
Yeah, they already are.
Do you?
That's the station.
How so? How so?
They're implementing parts of Obamacare and not others. That's not legal.
That, you're right. You're
It's
right.
only by presidential edict.
And I agree with that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about that a little bit. Inside that document, and I wish I had my jacket here. My Constitution is actually in my pocket out of the car. If you read that document, I just wanted to refer to it because I've got mine out in my jacket. I want somebody to go get it. Dan, go to the car because I want to make sure everybody knows that I carry my Constitution with me. It's just I knew it was going to be warm in here. If you look at the Constitution, and first of all, folks, we are all on the same page. You don't get any more fiscally or socially conservative than I am. On any given vote that I take on your behalf, there are multiple conservative values in conflict with one another. If I vote no, I'm conservative for you, but I might not be conservative for you. If I vote yes, I may be conservative for you, but I'm not conservative for you. Because everybody's got different definitions of what conservative means. I believe America ought to balance its budget. I believe that Washington should learn to live within its means. I believe that Washington needs to get off of the backs of the necks of the American people and stopping intruding into our private lives and into our businesses. I believe that Washington needs to shrink, not grow. I believe that Washington needs to stop the out-of-control spending. I believe that education decisions should be made by states, teachers,
constitutionally.
parents. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I believe all of those things. Just like you do. If you look at that Constitution, it gives very specific instructions to the legislative branch, and lots of it. When you compare the instructions that it gives to the legislative branch to the instructions that it gives to the chief executive, there's a big difference. That's because the relationship between the chief executive and the American people has, from our very founding, been largely based upon trust. Trust in a system of checks and balances, and trust that we would send responsible people to Washington. George Washington was not elected our first president because he was the smartest or the most intellectual or the most educated, because in fact he was none of those. But you know why he was elected? Because everybody trusted him. Because what he said on Monday was still true on Friday. He was not a man of wavering principles. And so every president from George Washington through the current president has had very broad discretionary authority as the chief executive. Some have abused it more than others. Now, we are experiencing an epidemic with this guy. I'm not going to deny that, and there's no way that I would sit here and try to defend anything that he has done. I want this president out of office as badly as you folks do, because I think he's bad for our country. I think his policies are bad for our country. But he is executing like any other chief executive could. And the checks and balances are failing us. If there's a light, if there's a silver lining in the cloud, we are learning that we, the American people, and I'm talking about a lot more of us than just for truth and lending. There's my Constitution. We, the American people, have awakened, thanks to the voices of folks like you. We have awakened to the responsibility that is ours to make sure that we are sending elected officials, men and women of character, integrity, responsibility, a love for our country, and a belief that this document stands for something, to Washington, D.C. And we have, over time, we as a people have failed in that responsibility. That's why we have the president that we have. I dare say nobody in this room voted to elect the president we have, so we're kind of preaching to the choir. But millions of others did. One of the problems that we have as a conservative base is that up until recently, until we got groups like yours that kept the issues in front of the American people, is that we sort of thought the odd years, 2013, 2015, 2017, we call those off years, non-election years. And so we go to sleep, you know. We roll our campaign headquarters up, we put it in a storage facility, we quit talking to the American people until the next even year comes around. Then we want them to run out and put up yard signs and street signs, and we want them to make donations to our campaigns. But we don't talk to them the rest of the time. And we've lost the confidence of the American people. We've got to re-engage that conversation because most Americans believe in the conservative principles that we believe in. They're just not sure that we believe in them anymore. We've got to change this. We said an opening prayer. And we prayed to the God that we are one nation under. And I think if I heard you right, you prayed in Jesus' name. Do you realize that not every day was a money changer in the temple kind of day for our Savior? Only once did he lose his temper and start shouting and yelling at people. Only once. The rest of the time, it was love. And it was drawing the line in the sand. It was those who demanded black and white, do it this way and only do it that way. That's what caused Christ a problem too, if you recall. We've got to come together as conservatives and stop beating each other up. Governance and politics are two different things. We get into the positions, and you know, if you'll indulge me for just a minute, I want to go back so you can understand where I came from. I'm not a career politician. I don't even like the name politician.